What's up, Coachable family? Welcome back to the Coachable podcast. I'm your host, Tori Gordon, and this is where you come to get game-changing advice so that you can learn how to level up and win at life and business. Today is a very, very special day. I am thrilled to be filming this episode, to be having this conversation with somebody who I consider to be one of my coaches, my teachers, the people who have spoken so much life into mine and has helped me to shift my perspective and get off of defense. Stop playing defense, stop playing survival, and learn how to truly take my power back and be an empowered creator of my reality, starting to play offense, starting to move down the field towards the things that are most important and meaningful in my life. And that is Peter Crone. Peter, if you don't know who he is, he works with everyone from world-class athletes to stay-at-home parents to redesign the subconscious mind. We exist in the limiting mental constructs that dictate our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and ultimately our results and what we experience. And Peter helps people and groups step outside of the world as they know it by identifying mental constructs that have been holding them back. Peter's work explores the fundamental issues that affect us all so that we can foster a deeper understanding of our common humanity. He's a writer, a speaker, a thought leader in human awakening and potential, and truly one of the greats in my book. So, Peter, thank you for being here and welcome to the Coachable podcast.
Thank you. Means a lot. I'm excited for the conversation, and I certainly am grateful for the kind words and the opportunity to hopefully contribute to your audience.
Yeah, I can't think of any other singular person who's been on this show to date. Maybe Marianne Williamson. We've had incredible people on the show, but someone who's had such a profound impact on my life personally, than you. And so this is a treasure. This is an honor, but it's truly exciting because I know the depth and the profundity of what your work can do for somebody. I am the byproduct of that. And so I know what it's going to mean to our audience as they learn more about you. Here's where I want to start, at least so I can
Sure.
give you some context for our audience. I call this show the Coachable Podcast because I think it's primary for us to be students, for us to learn, for us to grow, to evolve. And ultimately, I talk about the game of life as a metaphor, right? That there's these two sides that we play. Most of us, I think, predominantly play defense. We're playing not to lose. We're playing to survive, to prevent bad things from happening, right?
Yep.
And ultimately, the purpose of this show is to help give people tools, resources, experiences, understanding, perspective shifts so they can start to play offense, right? So they can get out of the mental constructs and the limiting ideas of themselves. And so they can create a life that's full of meaning and purpose and freedom, which is really the product that you are all about helping people discover and experience. So can you talk about why freedom is the key to really getting onto that offensive side of life, and how do we start to access it? How do we start to get off of defense? What is necessary before we can start to move into offense?
Well, I mean, beautiful. You've obviously done your work, and I'm not just referencing about me, but as it relates to the human disposition and all the things that we all struggle with. But before I get to that, I just want to say thank you for the kind words, and I'm so flattered that my work has influenced you personally. It's always humbling to see how many people around the world, the amount of times I get stopped even on the street or in a grocery store, even sometimes because people just recognize my voice and they're like, you in ways that you don't even understand. You saved my life, you changed my life. And so it's also nice to be with you as the host here and having had an impact. So thank you. With regards to freedom, I think the way you phrased it is really beautiful in terms of offense and defense. We could say that as a nice analogy, not nice in terms of the experience, but just to simplify for the audience, being on defense is sort of like you are, quote unquote, imprisoned, you're limited, you're stuck within a confining space. And being on offense is breaking free out of that. Now, that's obviously a literal, real life example of constraint. Whereas for me, the experience of internal freedom, which is what I'm bringing people, is, we could equate to a spiritual awakening. I know that sounds sort of very highfalutin and maybe a little bit too poetic for some people. But by being human, by design, we have these inherent limiting beliefs, these constraints of inadequacy, insecurity, and scarcity. And as long as we live in those, then we are automatically and sometimes obliviously going to be living in an avoidant energy, to your point, where we're trying to avoid missing the free throw. We're trying to avoid the breakup. We're trying to avoid the debt. We're trying to avoid the disease. And there's sort of this perception of a worst case scenario that people think they're heading towards, which is really a reflection of their trials and tribulations from the history, that the brain, by virtue of being an instrument to predict and protect, is trying to avoid the repetition of things. So freedom is to really emancipate ourselves from all of that exhausting means of just simply making it through life, which is no way to live, and it's tiring. So that's why I speak about freedom. Most people, it's funny because most people would think they are free because they don't look at it at a deeper level. But freedom really is something that I would assert is ironically our innate state. It's our essence. But as long as we're misassociated or misidentified with the human form, then by design in this three-dimensional construct that we're in, there is limitation. So the opportunity of being human is that we are free. We are in human form, which by design is limited. And so we're learning to transcend that. And that's the ultimate game of kind of cosmic hide and seek, as I call it.
Yeah. Yep. There's so much I want to get into here, but you say the preoccupation or over identification with the human form, with the body, with the idea of ourselves. And is it fair to say that that's what you would call ego, and kind of how we relate to the world through this lens of thinking, I live on planet Earth, I have to pay my taxes and I have to make money and I have to be a good citizen or a good daughter or friend, right? This concept of who we think we are and why we are trying to figure out why we exist. Is that what you mean with the preoccupation with the human element?
Yeah, and the misidentification. It's sort of very slippery. So yes, ego is a word I use, identity, persona. And persona really is like that facade, like even though I think where it's originates from Greek, it's like the idea of like on stage, they would wear a mask, as they performed on stage, and that was the persona. And so we all develop these masks, but yes, I sort of distinguish between soul, pointing towards our essence, you could call it spirit consciousness, and then ego or identity as it relates to our human persona. And so it's so slippery, and it really can be, replete with suffering. Suffering to me is really because of the misidentification with the form, that we think we're this meat suit, right? And that I have a particular age, I have a particular height, I have a particular nationality, even maybe a religion or whatever it might be, none of which are wrong, but they are nonetheless just based in conversation. They're not truths, right? So for me, it's about subtly creating space between that which I truly am versus that which I become misidentified with. And even in language, like obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, because you've done your research, I consider language as sort of the medium in which I traffic, because words are both the lock and the key, right? If I say something at a deeper level, albeit subconscious, then I'm not enough, or that I'm not loved because my parents perhaps were a little bit absent, or God forbid it was a single parent who was doing the best she or he could, but I never felt really held or seen or appreciated. And so the deep subconscious part of my identity could be around feeling insufficient, not special, not valued. Then that becomes the container within which I try to function. So there can be adaptation, survival mechanisms, right? Someone who thinks they're not enough, sometimes they'll become the perfectionist as a way of adapting, or they'll become the people pleaser as a way of trying to find enoughness through other people. Whatever the means of escape that we seek, or the survival strategy that we take on, that behavioral adaptation is always a facade, and it can't be sustained. It's exhausting. So that whole realm of basically human suffering, I do put under the auspices of ego or identity. And the opportunity is to go back kind of to your first question, in order to access the offensive way of living and being free, we have to first notice we're not.
Yep. Yep.
And most people don't know that they're not free, so they're not even looking to become free until such time that they face trials and tribulations. They get triggered in a relationship, the loss of a loved one, the being fired or let go of a job, and the things that we all face in life. I mean, these are things that aren't pleasant to go through on the subjective level, but I would assert are the catalysts for our own spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
And so, one of my more popular quotes that people share on social media is, I say, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. And so it might seem like a pain in the rear when we're going through things, but to me, it's actually life giving the opportunity to see where you're not free, recognizing the powerful divine being that you are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can think anytime I hear somebody like you talk, I self-reference, right? And I tried to search out in my own life, like, where can I relate to this? How can I relate to this? And when you talk about, that spiritual awakening or that moment that shakes you out of your stupor, your slumber, this like unconscious way you've just been kind of sleepwalking through life.
Yeah.
I relate so much to your work because you and I have shared similar experiences in the sense that I know you lost your parents both very young. You went through a really heartbreaking relationship ending that was also the catalyst for your kind of coming into some of these awarenesses, right? Around the problems that you think you have. I've heard you say, the paradigm of survival or living on defense is looking for solutions to problems. And the problem that we all have is thinking that we have one, right?
Yeah.
And
That's the ultimate
that's
problem.
kind of the lens through which we see our circumstances, is thinking that maybe it shouldn't be this way, or we don't want it like this. So how can we change it? And for me, I relate so much to you and your story because, like you, I've experienced a lot of loss. Just to let you know a little bit about me and how I relate to you is, I lost my sister. She was 23 when she passed. She was 4 years older than me to leukemia. I also lost my mom to stage 4 ovarian cancer a couple years later. Those who listen to the show know that in between then, I lost all of my grandparents, my uncle, most all of my immediate living family, except for my dad, is now passed away. And so that all of those experiences were opportunities for me to wake up and recognize, one, I'm so much more than a body. And that was the beginning for me. Okay, if I'm not just a body, what am I? And even prior to this awakening, I would have considered myself a spiritual or faithful person. I grew up in religion. That's been a whole different part of my journey of trying to find universal truth versus what I've been told and taught to believe. But that was kind of the beginning for me of questioning and being curious about, okay, if I'm not just this 3D human experience, then what am I? Because there was a moment in time where my family and I had to make the ultimate decision to take my sister off life support. And that moment was such a profound, like, holy moment, because we're standing there, and I'm with her, and she's there very much, like her spirit, her soul, her essence was animating that body. And then it wasn't. And that transition was the awakening my soul needed to recognize there's so much more. And so since then, I've been reconciling and trying. Obviously, that was also very traumatizing, and there was a lot of beliefs that I built around loss and all of that as a byproduct. But it was, to your point, that catalyst for getting out of the illusion that this is all that there is, right? The dream that I'm just Tori, as with brown hair and a body and is a daughter and a friend, etc. With that being said, I have struggled personally, and I know a lot of people in this listening to this show have struggle with the human element, right? I've had and done a lot of personal development work on myself. I continue to do it. It's like it's what I do for a living. It's also what
Yeah.
if I stop working on myself, I'll have nothing to share with people, right? Because I only
Yeah.
share what
Yeah.
works for me. But
Yeah.
one of the things I have come to realize is this idea that there's soul, spirit, who I am, my core essence, and then all of the things that come as a byproduct of being human. And I'll
Yeah.
share how I've come to that. So through
Okay.
deep breath work or meditation or plant medicine experiences. Most recently, I started ketamine therapy with a doctor here, and it's been really beautiful. And one of the first things I experienced was my soul, which I had experienced before, but I very much felt in those experiences. It was like I recognized that I'm sort of a genie in a bottle. Now, follow me
Okay.
here. So, like,
Yep.
when I go into that experience, even a deep meditation, my spirit, my essence, my soul kind of comes out of the body. The genie comes out of the bottle, if you will, and I can experience the fullness of my connectedness to all that there is. That love is who I am and where I originate from. I experience
Yeah.
all the fruits of the spirit, right? Gentleness, kindness, love, like deep connection. And then when I come back into my normal life and come out of the experience, whether it be a ketamine journey or a plant medicine journey or meditation, it's like the genie gets sucked back into the bottle, into the
Yeah.
body. I go back, and then I
Yep.
immediately feel the effects of being in this flesh, in this 3D reality where it's judgment and fear and shame and all of those
Yep.
things.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, how do I stay connected? I like to that soul, that essence, that truth, which I know is who I am. But then day
Yeah.
to day, life is like, here's your human. And she
Yeah.
is scared and she's fearful and she's trying to do it right. So it's like I've got this cognitive awareness and even deep at times embodied knowing that I am so okay. And then
Yeah.
there's my human that's a little girl that's so afraid. How
I
do
get it.
we integrate? Is there a way that we can transcend the human part and fully be, connected to the love that we are? Or is that just the human experience?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a beautiful question, and I love your commitment to it. There's a few sort of subtleties and some of the paradoxes of the human experience. I first just want to acknowledge you sharing, and obviously, I didn't know your personal story, but sorry for the passing of your sister and your mom. And excuse me. Oh, excuse me. So that is, that's a rite of passage for anybody, and I'm sure because you're familiar with my story, you've, I hope, if not, we can speak to it, have reframed the narrative of loss, right? So you didn't lose your mom, you didn't lose your sister.
Yes.
Maybe the form is not here anymore, like the meat suit, the human part, but their essence continues. It's sort of ever present. That is the eternal part of who we are. So, I appreciate you sharing that. And obviously there's a lot of simpatico between my experience and yours, so I can see why the work would resonate. But as it relates to, these beautiful journeys that you go on or experiences you have, whether it be breathwork, meditation, plant medicine, I think one of the beautiful things about having those practices is that we get a glimpse of what's possible and maybe even the arena of possibility itself. So the opportunity really is, to what degree can we infuse that into the human experience, like a deeper knowing. I make the distinction between knowing, which is with a K, and gnosis, which is with a GN, more sort of guttural, intuitive. And so it's kind of like the expression of, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So once you're familiar with the essence of who you are, which is boundless, timeless, limitless, you can't unsee that. You can't unknow that. Now, of course, you're going to get bamboozled with everyday life, especially if you're a mom, as you said. And we get pulled into the charade of the human experience. I'd just be conscious of the way you use language, though, like saying, how can I stay connected to that? Sort of implies what you're doing in language is you're saying, first of all, I'm not connected, and then I'm the human form trying to stay connected to it.
Sure.
It's the other way around.
Okay.
So it would be more accurate to say, how can I be less connected to my human form, right? Because who I am is the soul, who I am is the being, who I am is spirit, who I am is consciousness. So my essence is freedom, love, all the things you said, like you talked about kindness and being gentle, and discovering that real flavor of love, like a real love, not like the romantic celluloid Hollywood movie love, but like real love, which is beautiful. So once you get a flavor of that and you get that sense of it, you can start to bring that essence of you, the real you, into the human form. So it becomes like an in to out. Most of us from the human level become so preoccupied with the out to in, like I want to get their love, I want to get their acknowledgement, I want to get these accolades, I want to get this status outside. So it's all, we're using the outside as a means by which we try to get and garner the qualities of an experience we want, which ironically is who we already are. So rather than looking for an exogenous form of some form of security, reinforcement, love, affection, it's incumbent upon us to discover, oh, wait a minute, I have all of those qualities. That's who I am. And how can I, from the inside out, very much like the body works, right? We eat food, goes through the digestive system, into the blood, it gets metabolized at the cellular level, and something like our skin pushes out, right? So likewise, if I can bring those qualities, which is really the creative process itself, from the inside out, then meaning if I can be more loving towards others versus wanting them to love me, then I also am imbibing in the love that I express. If I can express acknowledgement and value to others, then by virtue of that expression coming through me, I also get to be the beneficiary of that same sense of value. So the opportunity is to recognize, first of all, as humans, we tend to look for the out to fulfill the in. And in fact, it's completely the antithesis. We want to use the in to fulfill the out. Out to in is very much a reactive process. It's sort of where I'm reacting to circumstance, versus in to out is very much creative. I get to see that I'm the cause of my experience. And so one of my expressions, again, I say, as we express, so we experience. So if I'm angry at someone and I think they're the one that pissed me off, well, I'm also the beneficiary or I'm, as a byproduct, experiencing my own anger, right? I might think it's over there with them, but I am ultimately the source of my own internal state. So some subtleties there, but you don't need to stay connected. You are eternally connected because that's who you are. But what the opportunity is to maybe disassociate, and maybe not that word because it's so often used in spiritual terms as letting go or not facing things, but to become, I use the word dissolution. So to become dissolved from the illusion of who I am, whereas when I'm in the illusion of who I am, we tend to look for solutions to our problems. For me, the access to freedom, to go back to the first question, is to dissolve the constraints that I've become unconsciously attached to. And that's where the connection reveals itself versus me trying to stay connected. I'm always connected. It's a process of revelation, right? Yeah. Where life is revelatory. I'm letting go, discarding, dissolving the parts of me that aren't me to reveal the essence of who I've always been and always will be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you do so well right there, is you're such a good listener. And it's the subtleties of how we're relating to even what I'm saying, and the way in which I'm saying it shows kind of the chip in the like the crack in the armor, if you will, or the crack in the idea that I have, and just how you shifted that is so impressive, and also like really lands for me. And I hope the people that are listening really see that shift too, because it often feels like in the human experience, it can feel frustrating when you've had that awareness and you have that knowing, but to feel like that knowing is at a distance from you than it once was, where that felt closer and more tangible, and how that happens over this, very subtly. And it's not like one day you're like, you wake up in the morning and you're not as connected or aware of that. But I think, like you're saying, we're so fixated on our issues, our pain, our problems, and how do we avoid that? How do we stop feeling the pain? So either let's fix it, let's change it, let's avoid it, let's numb it, all of the ways we try to do that. And then this other piece around what you call the linguistic fortresses, the way we speak,
Yeah.
the language that we have says so much about our internal posture or how we relate or to life or to ourselves. Can you
Yeah.
speak more to that? Like, where did you start to understand that language was sort of this lock and this key? And how can we start to maybe self identify? Where is our
Yeah.
language showing us where we're stuck, where those blockages or those internal prisons really are?
Great question. And again, I do want to just sort of, not as a disclaimer, but with a sense of compassion for the audience and even for you, that it is incredibly tempting, and we easily get bamboozled into the human experience, like that I
Mhm.
am this. If you look at the way that language is constructed, even from a very young age, we hear words consistently: you're bad, you're good, you're pretty, you're smart, you're fast. Like, it's pointing to who we are as a human. And so the constant attribution of these qualities to the human part of us as though that's who we are, it makes it, it's no surprise that that's where we all relate from,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's really important that people have that sense of patience and compassion with themselves. That it's incredibly seductive for us all to think that we are this human form. Um, so to understand that, to then, with what we've already discussed, to recognize actually some of those qualities that you're talking about, that kindness, that gentleness, we can start to, and I would assert it's actually because we have this limited part of us, this limited form, this human part, that we have that by design. Because if we were flawless, if we were perfect, then we wouldn't have to develop the capacity for love and compassion and patience, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost like, who out there doesn't love the parts of them that they are enamored by or they like, their favorite features? They've got great cheekbones, they've got great hair, they've got great butt, they've got, whatever it is that people love about themselves. It's easy to love those, right? Because there's a feeling of like acceptance and maybe even reverence for those parts of them. Um, for me, the opportunity that it is to be human is that by design we are flawed, we're imperfect, and we're so, as I said, attached to this three-dimensional extension of ourselves,
Mm.
and so much of it we don't like. We are ultimately our worst critics. I just did a presentation in front of 5,000 people where I said, when we're born, the factory settings of the brain are to self-destruction,
Mhm.
right? So that's how you come out, and then we develop means of sort of placating that, numbing it, hiding it, disproving it, whatever. But it's really quite beautiful because you recognize the capacity that we have to love, which is immense, especially as a mother. That's when it tends to start to really show up for a
Mm.
parent, as you probably getting to your 30s, mid 30s, maybe even late 30s. Some people early 20s or late 20s, and it's not a stretch to say most people by then are pretty pissed off and resigned with life. They've been
Mhm.
knocked around enough times. And then, boom, this miracle of your own child shows up, and you just feel this depth of love. Like,
Mm.
it's a reminder of like, no, 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 you're not here to just sweat through life struggle and just make it. And so I think similarly, albeit in a slightly different fashion, the depth of love that we can feel for a child is what we're actually learning as a being, as a
Mm.
spirit, is to go, oh, I have the capacity to love at such a profound level, but how ironic that my human form, the sort of the last recipient of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and so it's, I think by design, as I said, that we're given this human form with all of its imperfections, flaws, and things that we judge, as the catalyst, the means to how much love can we develop at a deeper level, such that we find even that profound capital A acceptance for every aspect of ourselves.
Mhm.
And that to me really is that human experience that we're all on, is developing true love,
Yeah.
not romantic love, but true love, which has no agenda and it's all embracing.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm not a mother, I'm a dog mom. I don't
Oh,
but
you said a
but
daughter. I thought you said a daughter. Is that what
no,
your dog?
I'm a daughter. I'm a daughter of my dad
Oh,
to my
you're a daughter. I
parents.
thought you
Yeah,
said you
yeah.
had a daughter. Okay.
I don't, but I do. I very much feel like that is hopefully in the next chapter of my life. I feel very ready
Yeah.
and that I'm on the precipice of that. And it's interesting that this is what we're talking about, because even this morning, like I have a dog who I consider my child, right? And I was walking him and I
Hmm.
was listening to my language, right? And how I praise him. I'm like, good boy, you
Right,
know?
right.
And I started to
Yeah,
think about, if I have a child, obviously in preparation for this conversation with you, but how we come into the world and we learn from our parents and our caregivers, like what kind of world we live in. If it's
yeah.
that we live in a world of duality, of contrast, right? Of good and bad and right and wrong. And
Yeah.
uh, so that we learn to navigate the world, right? And that there are
Hmm.
consequences to our
Yeah.
choices. And how
Hmm.
often, because I've heard you talk about this, right? This disillusion of the idea that we could do it wrong. We could get it
Yeah.
wrong. We could be
Hmm.
bad. That is a
Yeah.
big, big thing that I have been working on and continue and still am working on, is this releasing of this idea that I need to be good, that I need to be a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
girl. I was always
Yeah.
straight A's, MVP, lead in the
Hmm.
play. I knew it felt good to get praise and I knew how to follow the rules to make that
Yeah.
happen for myself. But how I've
Yeah.
watched how that is carried into my life. And now, even just speaking to my dog, I'm like, how is it possible that if I have the chance to become a mother, that I don't ingrain the same idea into my child, where I'm saying,
Hmm.
good job, baby. You know what I mean? And she learns, mama loves me when you do that, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Because that seems like a real challenge that
It
we
is. I mean, and
face.
again, it's part of the vernacular of being human, especially being a parent, right? Like I have a lot of parents with the different means by which their parenting does work, doesn't work, how kids
Hmm.
respond. So many people who have done my work are like, I want to learn this so that my kids don't go through the same traumas and dramas and BS that I went through. So I think, first of all, it comes back again to compassion and patience for parents. Is like everyone's doing the best they can within the limits of their own conditioning. Um, but yes, it's sort of unavoidable. I think, the world of duality is the means by which we have an experience, right? You only experience something due to the relativity of something. If you're lying in bed and you're a little warm and you move your leg over and you feel cooler on the other side, near, the
Hmm.
side you haven't been sleeping on, the sheets have got a lower temperature. You only experience that because of the relative difference in delta in temperature. So I think it's inbuilt into this paradigm of being human that we have um, both the construct in language, but then also the reality of experiencing something based on duality. Someone's tall, someone's short. We witness these things in
Yep.
real life. So it's sort of unavoidable. What I would encourage and invite parents to get a little bit more focused on is the degree to which they allow all of it, right? So if there is too much encouragement, too much accolades, too much encouragement when someone does something good,
Hmm.
traditionally good, and there's the absence of it when they do something bad, I would say that's far more detrimental to the development of a human being, because what you're saying is we don't make space for the bad, right? And that's not love, right?
Right.
It's sort of, as an analogy, sun shines regardless. It doesn't pick, well, we're only going to shine in the Bahamas or the Caribbean, forget about Eastern Europe. Like, it's like the sun just
Hmm.
shines. And so I think the invitation for everybody is, to what degree can we be big enough as beings in our capacity to love, to be free, to be all embracing and accepting, that we recognize on the continuum that is the human spectrum of both emotions and behaviors, it all has a space, right? It's all allowed.
Hmm.
I often use the analogy of, like, if you were to throw a dinner party and you had to invite all of your emotions and you're going through the list, you're like, yeah, of course we're going to bring positivity and fun and happiness and joy and creativity. They're amazing to have at the at
Right.
the dinner table. And then you get low on the list, it's like depression. Oh, do we really have to bring depression? It's such a downer. And anxiety, they're always like, won't shut up.
Butterweb
They're always worrying
blanket.
about something. And
Yeah.
anger, like someone's going to get punched. And
Right.
so you start to see the sort of the asinine way that we as humans don't embrace sort of what we might call our shadow side.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that, it's a shame, because it's kind of holding the pendulum up on one side, and it becomes exhausting because you're not making space for the beauty that is the human experience. And what I find working with people is that the bigger we become and the more we make space for all of our quote unquote qualities and characteristics, the less the negative ones tend to impact us. We become so vast in our capacity to hold space for all of it that most of the resistant, reactive, negative type energies tend to be more present when they're being denied, So if you're like, yeah, come along, depression, you have a bad day, don't worry about it. We got plenty of space. We can lie on the couch and just watch Netflix for 5 hours without berating ourselves. It's okay,
Right.
And then at that point, there's so much freedom around it. You're like, I don't want to waste time watching Netflix. I'm going to get on and do something, right? Like versus if we resist it, the old expression of what you resist persists. Everyone's heard that. So it tends to just linger. So again, my invitation is freedom and love. That sort of, it's a powerful suite. There's so much freedom and there's so much that we can allow everything to be there. And there's love that it sort of not only allows it to be there, but it embraces it being there.
Sure.
So then it's really miraculous what actually happens for us as an experience, because we're no longer denying, a very large part of what it means to be human.
Yeah, that has been the allowance and the making room for all of these parts of me has been it's a journey. And it's where I'm like learning to create space and like this part of me, me too, like this is also allowed to be here because the conditioning and the construct that I have lived in for so long was if this, right? And I see this a ton with my clients, is this all going back to that defensive posture. It's like, if this happens, then insert blank that's bad, right? If I do this, then this will happen. And so I realized that so much of my life was like, I was perpetually trying to avoid this theoretical punishment I was afraid to get, right? This idea that if I do something wrong, or if I'm not good, or if I'm not perfect or whatever, then I'm going to be punished. And what I equated to punishment was love being taken away or loss, right? Quote unquote loss. You're leaving. Now you're going to take your presence from me.
And that's very scary.
Yeah. And that's still something I struggle with, if I'm honest, especially in relationships. I get, as a byproduct of quote unquote, I know I didn't lose them, but so many family passing. When I find love, it's like, I want to hold on to this, right? How do I keep them close?
Can I interrupt? Because this is profound. So look at the language again. Like, if I find love, so what does that immediately imply?
That I don't have it if I...
and it's outside of you.
Right.
So again, one of the ways to look at it that would be very profound for you and hopefully the listener is not that I found love, because that denies the presence of it eternally in me as who I am. I am love. What you could say, and I'm not denying this because this is a human experience, is that I was inspired that someone else was the catalyst, the excuse, the reason, the justification to reveal the love that I am.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, just get that, right? It's very subtle, right? When I find love, of course, because then you have to try to hold on to it, because you're under the assumption that the love is outside of you. Love being the ultimate currency for a human being, more so than money and fame and whatever. Like, of course, we're going to do everything we can to hold on to it, but it's only because of the misinterpretation of where it is. So if you think it's outside of you, then it only makes sense that you're going to try and hold on to it. Very human, very natural. And this is why we have all the love songs and all the love stories and the dramas, right? Oh my God, you complete me. It's like all of that. But you have done enough work, and I can, tell I'm a pretty astute listener that, you have the awareness, you have the intuition. First of all, you're a woman, so you're much more in touch with these things than most men. No slight to my brothers, but it's just the way it goes. So you're never finding love. You might be discovering the love that you are, and it's beautiful to acknowledge somebody as I said, the stimulus, the catalyst for that. But then what happens is it becomes so much more palpable, profound, and authentic, because if the love is over there with them, then I have to hold on. I can't lose. And then the survival mechanisms for that I can see in you are becoming the perfect girlfriend, the perfect woman. And that can cross the gamut from how you have to perform in the bedroom to how you have to perform in the kitchen to how you have to perform in the workplace, right? Like, because we're sort of under the impression that I have to be and do something in order to make sure I don't lose the love that's outside of me.
So I can
It's
maintain
no different.
this. Yeah.
Huh?
So that I can maintain this because I don't,
Yes.
yeah, because the idea is that it's going to go away. And the
Yes.
idea is that it was in this person or this experience instead of inside of me.
It gets personified, and that's why we get
Right.
attachment, dependency relationships, because we're misinterpreting the truth of what's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
Is everything, even on a biomechanical level, if you want to break it down to synapses and the fact that everything in your life is occurring in your brain, which is in your skull. So even whatever you're experiencing, it could be you're pissed off at someone. No, that person just did or said what they did. I'm not condoning the behavior, but that was equally the catalyst to reveal the anger, which is in you, which really is a survival mechanism on top of you got hurt by something. Right? So the hurt is in you. Same is true with every experience. It's just love is one that everyone loves to talk about. And it's, I would say, as I said, it's the ultimate currency for us to discover. But as long as we're collapsing it with another person, then, we're screwed, or not, as the case may be.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that we recognize and become accurate with our languaging, that you didn't find love, certainly not in somebody else, but rather that person helped to reveal the love that you are. And that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a baby, like in the amount of love that a grandparent or a parent feels towards a baby. Baby's not doing shit, or literally that is all they're doing, is sleeping and eating, right? Like, so, that's not really that much to be like wowed about. It's like that doesn't, in traditional terms, quantify or qualify for the amount of love that I should bring to them. Normally we associate, well, I love someone because they're beautiful, they're intelligent, they're smart, they're successful. Like in the adult realm of love, it's because they have attributes and they've accomplished things. Yet think about it. Like if love was based on somebody's resume, then why the hell would we love a baby so deeply?
Sure.
Right? Not doing anything.
Right.
So you start to see, the external world is merely the means by which I get to reflect and reveal the experiences that I have for myself. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was such a profound thing you said that I could hopefully refrain for you, which now, hopefully next time you fall in love, it's really the falling in love I kind of like as an expression. Some people in the spiritual realms use rise in love, whatever. But for me, it's more a fall because it's a relaxing, right? So if this is my soul and this is my human form, I'm attached to that. We meet someone, it's fireworks and all the good things that we've all experienced. And because I feel so seen and so held and excited, and they are the catalyst to reveal the love I am, I can relax. And so I fall back into the essence of the love that I am. So I'm not falling in love with them, I'm falling in the love that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you can really stay there, then it really is the foundation for beautiful relationships, whether they be romantic or otherwise, is to see, I am the source of my own experience. And for that reason, whenever I feel love, again, not to in any way dismiss the other person, they can be the source of inspiration. They might have done a lot of work. There may be some sort of soul contract, whatever it is that caused the experience, but the experience is very much mine.
Yes. I receive all of that because I can even feel viscerally in my body this relief. Like,
Yes.
like I can't miss out on it. I can't, it's not going anywhere because.
And for you, my dear, with the very little I know about you already, again, not to interrupt, but I just want to contribute here as much as I can.
Please.
Why the relief is because I can see you're beautiful, you're smart. I don't know much about you personally in your own personal life, but I could see that you would like to have a family, you'd like to have a partner, you'd like to have. So what that does is it reveals, the fact that you've had pressure, which also buys into the little girl who's always trying to get it right or doesn't want to do anything wrong, right? The good girl, what I heard in the good girl is you're scared of doing anything wrong, which is very human, but it's exhausting and it's completely futile. So what it does is it allows you to go, hang on a minute. That little girl who doesn't want to do anything wrong, who thinks love is outside of her, I mean, you're screwed before you've even started trying to date, or find any kind of love out there, because there's so much pressure on you to perform, to look for it out there, to find the right person, all of the vernacular that everyone gets stuck in with regards to romantic relationships, versus you go, hang on a minute. I can breathe. I'm the source of my love. I have so much to bring. And because I'm so loving, I can also allow myself to make mistakes. That's called being human. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. The rest of us are happy to fuck things up because we can't get it perfect. So that is the relief for you, my dear, which also ironically makes you way more attractive, because you might be, I'm just going to, make a crazy assumption here. it might be, if I'm a man, it might be tough to be around someone like you.
Yes.
Not because you're not great or attractive or kind or loving, but because you're so put together, articulate, done the work, and a good girl constantly. That's a form of subtle to severe perfectionism, which for a guy, and most guys, let's face it, are way more fucked up than most women. That becomes overwhelming, and it becomes a little bit too much of a conflict.
Mhm.
And so they will tend to sabotage because they don't feel that they're sufficient for you.
That has very much been an accurate depiction of a lot of my experience. And
Yeah.
something too, though, I know I have to take responsibility for, and this is the catch 22, which I'm excited for this awareness to like deepen, because on the
Hmm.
other side of that, as a result of thinking it was outside of myself, I would smother them, right? It was like, don't
Hmm.
go anywhere. And that is a
Hmm.
pressure. That pressure I feel inside of myself, I then put
Yeah.
on the relationship. And this was like,
Yeah.
this is overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For them. And then they
Because you
would
got to remember
ultimately leave me, or they would
of
ultimately, and
course.
then I would be living out my worst fear.
Yeah. Which is, again, fear will break its own heart, is the expression I use, right? So we will always fulfill on our own fears because
Mm,
that's what we're here to transcend.
yeah.
So not only is it overwhelming for them, but you have to remember, by design, by virtue of being human, every person has got the feeling of inadequacy within them. It's just again, factory setting. Now, of course, you date someone older, more mature, they've done the work, they've done plant medicine, maybe they've listened to a few Peter Crone or done my mastermind or whatever, maybe they've transcended a little bit. But when there's that much love and attention on somebody, it tends to exacerbate the feeling of inadequacy, like I'm not deserving, I don't warrant this kind of love. And that will become then the sort of implosion of self sabotage
Mm,
that will pull someone away. So we want to find that balance between, of course, I'm very loving, you're certainly very loving. We want to bring that love, but it has to be in an authentic way that's not, it doesn't have an agenda about it, right?
mm,
Yeah, I know you can listen and not take this personally, but you, like many people that I work with, your love right now has got an underlying agenda.
yep.
And it's not wrong. It's kind of adorable because it's really a little girl who says, "Don't leave me." It's sweet,
Mm,
but it's also incredibly destructive. And it's not going to allow for a really beautiful partnership where you're like actually adoring somebody as a shared partnership, but not somebody who is, the sort of the raison d'etre for your existence. They're not saving your life because they love you finally, because you don't, right?
right.
It's like, no, I'm a complete sovereign being. I give rise to all of my experiences. I am the love I'm looking for. I am the worth that I am been looking for. It's all innate. And I get to express that and share that with someone, which is beautiful.
I mean, you guys, you're listening and watching in real time. Like, I feel like transcending those limitations, because the old me was like, but I'm trying so hard. You know what I mean?
Yes, of
Like,
course.
I'm trying so hard. Like, why is this not
Yeah.
working? And I'm really doing my best. But that was like the
Yeah.
best I could do within the belief system that I had.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
And I
Like,
see it. I see it. It's adorable. That's why I said we want to bring compassion. We want to
yeah.
see the little girl who's trying so hard. It's adorable, but it's also not adult and it's not mature and
Hmm.
it's not going to work,
Hmm.
right? And the tendency, by the way, for women like you, and there's many of them out there, I'm sure, listening, is to take on that maternal role. So actually, you end up dating a little boy who you get to take care of, and that's your value proposition, is that you see, oh, well, this little boy loves me, yeah, but he loves you because you're basically his mother.
Hmm.
Right? Which then you start to lead into all sorts of intimacy issues where things aren't working in the bedroom, and then you don't feel respected, and then it develops into resentment, and all of a sudden, that what was the fireworks at the beginning and it felt like this is amazing, it's a dysfunctional relationship. And
Right.
again, there's nothing wrong. I have all the compassion and patience, but if you can start to become aware of it and be responsible for it, go, oh, right, I tend to attract the men who are a bit needy because that helps me fulfill on me being overly accommodating or overly affectionate or overly thoughtful, which then leaves me depleted and eventually, exhausted and resentful. That pattern is never going to be sustained. It's just not.
I mean, we're on the head of like some of my deepest rooted patterns, because, and this is
Hmm.
something like, this is the crux of the work that I've like been really trying to like take the key, and like which key works to unlock this thing.
Good,
Because
good.
even what you just said, And this is something I'm reflecting on recently, is this connection to goodness and like trying to be so good for my partner, or for my friends, or for whoever, my
Yeah.
clients, the work, the industry that I'm in is trying to help people like relieve them
Yeah.
of their suffering because I'm trying to do the same. But I made this connection recently, and maybe you can help bring some light to how this is all connected, which is this
Sure.
real need to, li- like you said, if I attract and I end up like dating a little boy and I kind of take on the archetype of the mother,
Hmm.
it's if the relationship ends or they go away or they pass away or they leave, right? Then I feel like I have failed.
Yes.
And that is in connection to, I think there's something related to my sister, because
Okay.
when
Yeah.
she died of leukemia and she needed a bone marrow transplant. And as her
Hmm.
sister, I should have been the one to give her that transplant. I'm the
Hmm.
best case scenario for being a donor. And when they
Yeah.
tested me, I was actually only a half match. And so we had to go out to the bone marrow registry and look for a match for her. She ended up getting one. It failed. She relapsed, and the donor didn't want to donate again. Ultimately, we know the end of that story. But I think
Yeah.
probably on some level, I feel like I failed her and that it was up to me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
therefore I wasn't a good sister, and then I'm not a good daughter, or I'm
Yeah.
not a good friend or partner. And so I feel like this is infused even to the work. Why I started to do the work I do is because I
Yeah.
wanted to be desperately wanted to be good and to like almost
Yeah.
rewrite. And if in my partnerships, like if I can help save them, then
Yeah.
feel like I'm rewriting this story from my past, like that I can
Yeah.
fix what
I get it.
happened.
No, I really get it. And you're such a sweetheart. And obviously, we've never met before, so I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. But I'm glad that I can maybe hold space for
Mm.
you. And it obviously touched you deeply, right? I think you said you're 23 and she was 4 years older or so.
Mm.
So
She
I don't
was
know how old you are
23
now,
when she
but
passed. Yeah.
she was 23. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, how can I put this? I just want you to recognize how beautiful it is, and your version is what a lot of people are doing. So what you're trying to do, and why your life isn't working to the degree it could. Obviously, you have a successful podcast. Again, I don't know the intricacies of your personal life. I'm sure you live a nice life, but energetically, in terms of your spiritual evolution, you're trying desperately, and I really emphasize the word desperately, to compensate for your history. And in fact,
Mhm.
you're actually trying to fix your history. And in your language, you should have been the donor. It sort of implies responsibility that is not a healthy responsibility.
Yeah.
It's fault, right? And so you're collapsing something that was unavoidable. How do we know it's unavoidable? Because that's what happened, with the idea that somehow it was your fault.
Yeah.
And so so just let me ask you, when you think your sister's death, which is a big thing, is your fault, what does that feel like to live inside of that and go
Um,
there? Like it's your fault that she died.
um, Completely defeating and hopeless almost. It's like there's a particular type of pain that I feel when I feel helpless to change a
Yeah.
situation that is beyond my control.
Yeah.
Helpless. Yeah.
Yeah. Powerless, hopeless, all
Yeah.
of that. But with you, there's a little subtle undercurrent of blame and shame around
Mhm.
that. We all feel powerless at times, right? Whatever's going on in the world the last few years, like there's a lot of helplessness. But there's a difference when you feel hopeless and helpless, but it's also yet your fault. It's somehow incumbent
Mhm.
upon you to have resolved it.
Right.
And that's both sort of a double-edged sword, right? Like it's one thing to feel hopeless as a human, it's another thing to feel guilty for it.
Mhm.
And that's a weight that is not yours to carry. Because now what you're doing in every arena, coaching, trying to help people, relationship, trying to be the perfect girlfriend, I'm sure you're an incredible friend to so many and you overthink things and are incredibly considerate. much of that is ironically your true nature. You're just very loving, you're very kind, you're very thoughtful. But when there's this underlying agenda where you're trying to do it to compensate for a history that couldn't have been different because it wasn't, now you're on the proverbial hamster wheel of suffering. And that doesn't benefit anyone. It's it's deleterious to you. It's going to be deleterious to your body over time. It's certainly going to impact and create dysfunction in your relationships. None of this is your fault. I'm just pointing it out so you can see the patterns, which you're obviously clearly aware of. But even when you're trying to help others, even with your coaching, your business, here's the irony. One of the best ways you can help people is by it's for you to stop trying to be so perfect, because they have their own version. So really helping people is much more about their humanity and allowing them to see the parts of us that we all have where we think that we're not great. We think it's our fault. We think we're not lovable. We think we're not worth it. And to make space for that. So if you can, Tori, make space for the little girl, and you weren't that little, I'm guessing you were 17 or so, or no, 19, I think, to go that little girl, you're 19, we're still very young and immature, but she adored her sister. She loved her sister, and she felt so helpless and so powerless, and there really wasn't anything you could do. And your sister chose to exit at that point because that's when she left. And it did not and should not have been any other way. The opportunity in your lifetime and the gift that your sister really is to you is to reveal the part of you that you're here to heal, which is that you think it's your fault. That's how much your sister loved you, is that the soul agreement she had with you is that I'm going to leave so that you can face the illusion and the lie that it's your fault, so that you can transcend that and be free.
Yeah. The guilt, that's a primary emotion that I think I feel in relation to her, because I feel like I carry the fault piece more because I regret not having a closer relationship with her when she was here. And
Yes.
so I think I punish myself for that. Cause like
You
in
can
our
drop the
teens,
thing.
I punish myself for it. Cause when I was in my teens, and we were just far enough away in age where we didn't ever just bond. And
Yeah.
and I think there's also a part of me that just really wanted that,
Yeah, that's okay. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
again,
so
you're berating yourself for
Yeah.
something that couldn't be different. One of my
Right.
most popular quotes is, what happened. Couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And there's profound acceptance to be found in that. That is the complete reconciliation of our history. I get, but you were 19, you were 17, you were 15, and she was always 4 years older. And that's a big enough delta in those years that, you kind of don't want to hang out. She doesn't want to hang out with you. You're too young. You don't want to hang out with her. She's too cool, or, whatever the hell's going on for two girls. So for you, the opportunity, which is just such a gift for many of your listeners, hopefully most of them, is to see your history couldn't have been different. Even as littered as it was with a couple of very trying losses, in the death of your mom and your sister. But, it couldn't have been different. Why? Because it wasn't. So what is the opportunity? What is the legacy that you get to live now in the absence of your sisters? Do you want to keep looking over your shoulder in the rearview mirror of your life, berating yourself, beating the shit out of yourself, trying to compensate for all of the things that you think were your fault, which is really a slight to your sister? Or do you want to break free and kind of, quote unquote, get over yourself and realize, wait, I want to live a life that's full of love. And even though I didn't, quote unquote, get to express that to the form of my sister, she's still here present and energetic. Her presence is still here. And so she can witness, I can be with my sister, whether it be in a prayer or whether in the actions that you choose, that you can choose to now have that relationship with your sister, even in the absence of her physical form. But as long as you're looking over your shoulder and you keep making yourself wrong and thinking it's your fault, then, it may sound a little bit dramatic, but then that's also the death of you and you're still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause then I realize I've just been on a quest to save people from their fair, painful circumstances, trying to rewrite the past.
Yeah.
And so this.
But what I really want you to get, what I said, even though it was a little dramatic, is your sister died.
Yeah.
but the way you're living is like a dead person. And I know that sounds very dramatic, but I just want you to get it. You're so full of life, and the last thing your sister would want you to do is to squash and inhibit the aliveness that you are because of a narrative of fault about her passing. Not only then did you lose, which we've, reframed, you didn't lose your sister, but you didn't only lose your sister, but you lost yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I watched that happen with my mom. So it's interesting. It's like my mom like died when my sister did, but then it also manifests as disease in her own body. And I've never
That's why I
seen
said
it
it's
that
very
way in my
destructive.
own. Yeah. I've never seen it for what it is and how it's been in my own life. But that's exactly what I've been doing.
If there's one compliment I got was, over and over, was my mom died when I was 7 of cancer. My dad died at 17, went to work and never came back. And I can remember when I was at my first year of college and we broke from the first semester to go home for the Christmas holidays, a friend who I'd got to know in those first few months said, what are you doing for the holidays? You're going home to your family. And I said, no, I actually don't have family. And he's like, well, what do you mean you don't have family? That doesn't make sense. So, well, I was an only child and my parents passed. And he took a minute and it really hit him. And he's like, you got to be kidding. And I said, no, it's just my karma. And he said, if we lined up all 15,000 students of this college and I had to pick the kid who didn't have family, you'd be the last person I picked. He said, you're so full of life and you're so kind and you're so happy and you give so much to everybody. I don't get it. And I said, well, that's because I want to pay homage and have a legacy that my dad would be proud of. And so even though your sister's not here, you really have an opportunity to make the most of her death, even though that sounds like, again, an oxymoron, rather than feel sorry for it. Because then, as I said, not to reiterate it, but to reiterate it, 2 of you die. And I know she wouldn't want that for you.
Yeah. I think it's embracing the idea that I deserve to have the life that she didn't get to have.
Yeah.
I deserve to have it all. I get to have it all instead of actually kind of preventing myself out of survivor's guilt or whatever it is. I'm thinking, that I'm actually,
because you're also not,
go ahead.
You're also not recognizing the way life works, which is we all have our own karma. Nobody incarnates here by accident and nobody leaves at an inappropriate time. If you notice on the human level, when someone dies, it's always inappropriate. It's not the right time. But that's not the truth from the spiritual side. Right? Everybody, every being leaves at exactly the time they're meant to. So you're denying the laws of life by thinking that was bad, shouldn't have happened, the bone marrow donor should have been you, they didn't want to donate again, or all the stories, it's irrelevant. That was precisely what was drawn up in terms of your sister's karma. Do you see, that's such a profound level of acceptance in a way that we don't necessarily need to understand, or even on the human level, fine, agree with. But it doesn't deny the fact that it transpired exactly how it was transpiring. And that was exactly how it was meant to transpire. So you may live to 120, you may live to 70, you may live to 45. I don't know what your karma is. I don't know what my karma is. But get over it and start living your life. And I don't mean get over it in a way that's callous. You love your sister. For, I don't know how old you are, but for over a decade, I'm sure you have been like, quote unquote, grieving with all your own narratives of fault and responsibility and guilt and shame, the passing of your sister. I think you've put in your time.
Sure.
Let's start having some fun and bringing the love and the joy that you are, that I can see in you, that isn't shrouded in this feeling of I don't deserve, or I shouldn't live too large, or I shouldn't have too much fun because of my sister. That just is a disservice to you and everybody around you, and including your sister.
Yeah, I feel that. I over the last couple of years, I've had these inklings. I've had these like epiphanies. I've done obviously many journeys and that have given me the awareness and understanding that everything is okay. There was nothing in, like, all of this happened in divine timing. I have that understanding. And yet
Yeah.
I was still playing out the pattern. So this
Yeah.
is so like allowing myself to fully enjoy like the joy piece and the fun, and that is new for me over the last couple years. And it's that
Yeah.
everything doesn't have to be hard, and the whole point of doing all this work is so that we can enjoy life and love at the
Absolutely.
deepest levels. So I receive all of that, and
Yeah.
thank you for that reflection.
No, you're welcome. And I can see it. And even in the little chuckle in your voice, we could assert that that's a little release of energy
Mhm.
where, if I were to say, okay, look at the state of the world, which right now I would assert is pretty dysfunctional. It's very disharmonious. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of lies. If we could choose to be a human being, understanding that our presence in the world contributes to the whole, meaning if there's 8 billion people, then those 8 billion people in the way that they emote, the way they feel, their internal state is contributing to the collective. What would you rather? Would you rather be a person who is on the one side, which is feeling sorry for themselves and suffering,
Mhm.
or would you be a human who is boundless, feeling free and full of love?
Yeah. Second. I'll take the second.
It's not that difficult of a choice when you get it.
No.
And you, my dear, with all the best intentions, helping, coaching, doing this podcast, have been unconsciously, so there's no guilt even to apply to this understanding that I'm bringing, been living in the world of woe.
Mhm.
Fault, guilt, shame, don't do anything wrong, surviving, making it. We don't need more people like that.
Mm-mm.
We need more people who can like display so that we can all mimic the experience of joy, of freedom, of love, of kindness, of harmony. That's what we need. We need human beings who embody that. That's what's going to shift the world, not because we feel like this onus and this literal weight of guilt and shame for a history that we haven't yet accepted. Everyone's got that.
Mhm.
It's like, come
Mhm.
on.
No, in real time, I feel the freedom. Like really, I
There you
experience
go.
the freedom of letting myself off the hook, and
Yeah.
and coming into, just seeing it clearly and seeing myself clearly. And that's such a miracle and a shift in my perception of myself and of my life, and like how much deeper, um, more reverence, more and depth of connection and love and joy that I can experience. And from a not from a wounded place, like the work that I do,
No.
that I don't have to love from a wounded place, but from like a really beautiful whole place is such a gift.
Completely genuine place. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can see it in your face. And it's such a joy to be able to be the excuse, the catalyst, the reason for you to discover the joy, freedom, and love that you truly are. And that you were, quote unquote, the one putting yourself on the hook, that you now took yourself off. And that's why there's no guilt, because it was oblivious. Everyone does
Yeah.
their own version and they're unconscious to it. And that's why we have patience and compassion as people go through this process. But now it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, those things happened and they were sad, and you can miss your mom and your sister every now and again, but it wasn't your fault. You don't need to live in guilt and shame. And you have an immense amount of love and joy to share to the world, and stop being stingy and hiding.
Yes. Amen. Okay. I thank you for that. I do have one kind of wrap up question for you
Sure.
around
Yeah.
it reverts back to the ego a little bit, but I think it's our nature to want to, and it's our brains, the way we're built and wired is to try and figure things out, right? Um,
Yep. Yeah.
how do we work with the ego,
Mm-hmm.
or in the way that I think it's natural? So many of us, so much of our pain and our suffering is because we're thinking about the future and trying to prevent the past from recurring. And we're like, how do I
Yeah.
trying to figure it all out? I know I've had many sleepless nights in my head thinking about what if case scenarios. And I know that
Yeah.
you had a time in your life where you were asking yourself a bunch of questions around what if this, what
Yeah.
if that. Can you tell that story and
Yeah.
how we can start to come into more harmony and peace instead of kind of always being at war with all of the scenarios that we're playing out in our mind, and stop trying to figure out everything?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really articulated beautifully. So yeah, my story was what I was kind of speaking to earlier, that I had personified my love with a girl that I was dating. And she had left me. And at that time in my life, she was, you could say, at the pinnacle of my love experiences. So it was all the more significant. She, potentially was the one, and all of the things that we hear that are, ways to sustain these illusory narratives. But anyway, so when she left, I, figuratively fell apart. I was tired. I couldn't sleep. I was depressed. I was missing her. I was calling on my friends, desperate men doing desperate things, trying to figure out how to get her back. And the sort of perennial questions that kept going around in my head were, where is she? Will I see her again? Is she dating someone? Will I find love like that again? And these were there for quite a few weeks. I probably went through this process for about 6 to 8 weeks. For the first couple of weeks, we'd stayed in touch, but then there was no communication. And I couldn't sleep. I even woke up one night and I screamed at my own head, shut up, to my own mind, because it was just incessant. And then I was trying to your point, figure out. And I want people to understand the process of trying to figure out a future is a survival mechanism, right? It's a behavioral adaptation to the underlying fear that we think we're not going to be okay. So anyway, to cut to the, sort of revelation that I had, I was sitting at my desk at a tiny little room in a rent-controlled apartment. And I suddenly realized the answer to all of the questions. Where is she? Will I see her again? Is she dating anyone? Will I have love like that again? And it was 3 simple words. I don't know. I just don't know. And it hit me in a way that was so profound because I realized the very nature of life itself is uncertainty, especially as it relates to the future and how we get preoccupied and obsessed with trying to figure it out. And for the first time in my life, not only did I see that we don't know what the future holds, I was totally okay with that. And the feeling and cascade of freedom that went through my body was like something I'd never had before. And that was the start of my entire work, where I realized the futility of the nature of life, which is uncertainty, collapse with the nature of the human brain, which is to try and overcome uncertainty. And you start to see the absolute contradiction of those two things trying to coexist. And so I just stopped trying to figure it out. Now, has my brain over the last couple of decades still tried to figure shit out from time to time? Of course. But I'm usually pretty quick to catch myself and go, oh, okay, what's needed here is not the answers to the unanswerable questions I have floating around in my head. What's actually being called for is a deeper development of trust. And so that is the ultimate antidote, is the logical, intellectual exercise of realizing the truth that we don't know what's going to happen. That itself can usually be sufficiently liberating for people to stop playing that game. But ultimately what it's calling for is a deeper sense that in ways that I don't understand, on the personal level, my life is taken care of and my needs are met.
Yeah. And I have so much compassion for those that don't yet have a relationship with the unknown or some higher being or power that they believe really loves them or is on
Yeah.
their side, because I imagine, trusting is very, very, very challenging for those that don't believe there's anything there to trust in.
It's a huge obstacle, and some people rely on their faith. It might be a religion and some sort of divine figure that they appeal to. I tend to be more sort of universal and embracing all different religions and look at it more as trust. And that is very difficult. It's, I would argue, maybe the most challenging thing for a human being, because we are designed to survive.
Yeah.
The primordial imperative of any mammal is to make it. We don't want to die. And so, we've been given this incredible piece of equipment called the brain, which is always trying to predict and protect, because its job, we could argue, is to make sure that we make it. And so, again, we want to notice the contradiction, the hypocrisy of the nature of life being uncertainty and the nature of our equipment being trying to find security.
Right.
And that's where a lot of exhaustion and dysfunction exists. And if you can just realize the truth that we're all clueless, and that doesn't make it less scary, but if we can at least embrace that to whatever degree we're ready to, and lean into trust, and of course be responsible as best we can for the way that we create a life that we want. Like, I'm committed to a lot of things, doesn't mean they're going to always work out, but we are co-creators. Just so happens that our partner in crime, so to speak, is immensely more powerful than us. And whether we look at it as a spirit guide or as a god or an angel or a parent that's passed away, there's somebody who's got a lot more wherewithal, intellect, and foresight than we do. And I find solace in that.
I do too. I think I know this is going to be a powerful episode for people, and there are going to be so many breakthroughs. And as we wrap up, I just want to bring it full circle, right, to the game of life, getting off of defense, getting onto offense. We try around here to help people learn skills, understanding, have the perspective shifts to help them win. What does winning
Hmm.
at life really mean to you? What is ultimate success in the eyes of Peter Crone?
If I were to put it in one word, I'd say peace,
Mm.
to be at peace. And the way we access peace, ironically, is to embrace both offense and defense. They both exist as part of the human experience.
It's beautiful, beautiful. You're incredible. Thank you. Thank you for the gift of your presence, of your wisdom, of the decades of work that you've put in to get to where you are and sharing it with us. It does is not lost on me or this audience. And I just am eternally grateful. So thank you for gracing us with your presence. Please tell our audience how they can know more about you, the work that you're doing. I know you've been working on a book. What are you excited about? And can you share that with our audience?
Absolutely. And again, I just want to acknowledge your acknowledgement. It's really beautiful. And I really got how heartfelt your words are. And that means a lot to me and why I feel very, lucky to do the work that I do to make the difference that I get to make. So thank you for saying that. In terms of finding me, Instagram is great at Peter Crone, or on the web at petercrone.com. In terms of pursuing the work, my most powerful, beautiful, incredibly inspiring, community-driven offering is my mastermind, which is a 3-month container that will be we're now only doing once a year, but we'll be probably in end of January, beginning of February. So depending on when this comes out, hopefully people can participate in that, where I not only teach my theories, but I coach people live, and you get to witness the awakening of beautiful humans who are
Mm.
committed to becoming free. So yeah, they're the best ways to find me, and hopefully the book will be out sometime next year too.
Yes. Well, and I know I'm anxiously waiting for that to come out. But in the meantime, you guys, please go over, give Peter a follow on social media and check out his website. I've been through his workshops before and they are absolutely transformational. So if you want to do the work, which I invite you to step up and to say yes to, because don't uh, don't let this information just go in one ear and out the other. This is meant to be applied, this is meant to be used so that you can experience that internal to external transformation. It happens from the inside out. And Peter is the guy that I trust to help me in my pursuit of that. And so I know you guys will get um, just as much value if you check his work out, petercrone.com, you guys. Until next week, go be coachable, stretch yourself, get uncomfortable, and remember you can't fuck it up. I love you. I'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast.